Things that may seem complex at first glance can be easily deconstructed into a set of patterns, attributes, properties, trends, and tendencies, and neatly categorized. For example, a computer, a mysterious box that somehow magically transmits movies and games to a monitor, can be easily broken down into a processor, a graphics card, RAM, and other components, and the interactions between them explain its entire functionality. Furthermore, we can break the processor down into cores, the cores into transistors, and the transistors into even smaller elements, repeating this process until we reach a point where further decomposition is impossible. The same principle applies to culture, politics, civilization, and any other substances of the real world. Premodernism, modernism, postmodernism, and metamodernism are analogous to a computer. Each era has different components interacting in unique ways, but by understanding the architecture of these systems, we can analyze the past and make predictions about the future. To understand the current era, postmodernism, and the emerging one, metamodernism, we must first examine premodernism and modernism. Pre-industrial or traditional society was built upon centuries-old customs. In reality, progress and trends resembling modernism had emerged multiple times throughout history, but in one way or another, core traditions persisted or were replaced by foreign ones through cultural expansion. People in the pre-modern world existed within an ethical paradigm instilled by their ancestors or introduced from outside. They knew exactly what they needed to do, how to respond to any situation, and in some cases even had a specific book with answers to all their questions. A key nuance is the absence of a rational foundation. No one forced these people to act this way, nor did they seek justification for their actions. They simply did things because that was how it had always been, because their way of life allowed them to live for centuries, unbeaten by anyone. The inevitable consequence of this was that, as soon as some individuals decided to overturn the existing system and introduce either destructive or progressive values, these new values spread explosively throughout society. Revolutionaries offered a clear idea and a dream, sincerely striving toward the ideal they had envisioned. A historical example of this phenomenon in the pre-industrial era is Christianity, though it quickly blended with the pagan traditions of Europe and did not lead to any significant destructive consequences. The defining feature of modernism, however, is its distinctly anti-biological and anti-natural nature. These explosive cultural memes, such as equality and fraternity, can indeed take hold of an entire society, but they cannot alter human nature. Thus, the struggle between modernism and pre-modernism is usually accompanied by extreme violence, destruction, and coercion. The most radical modernists advocated for the complete obliteration of the old world in order to build a new utopia from scratch, even to the point of demolishing classical architecture, simply because it was associated with old imperial regimes. Over time, modernist ideas become dominant in society, and pre-industrial consciousness fades away. However, people inevitably start asking, why did we destroy the previous world? What have we actually built? Postmodernism emerges as an analysis of modernism's failures. World War II, the apotheosis and culmination of modernism, became the greatest tragedy in human history. The defining sentiment of this period became never again, and as a natural consequence, nihilism and utilitarianism flourished. There were no longer grand ideals of world revolution on one side or national superiority on the other. Now, the only goal of existence was to eat, reproduce, and enjoy life, since economic conditions allowed it. Gradually, along with pre-modern values, modernist values also began to fade. People no longer believed in anything or desired anything. Widespread depression and apathy grew. A defining feature of the late postmodern era is humor. Post-irony and other forms of sophisticated humor became more developed than ever before, serving as tools for deconstructing both pre-modern and modern ideals. Gatherings like those of Hitler or Lenin are now simply impossible because people lack the seriousness of intent. The first instinct of a postmodern person upon hearing a phrase is to turn it into a joke find a meme association, or make a witty remark. People compete to write the funniest comment under a meme video. Humor has become the most popular sport, whereas in the past, it was the domain of a small circle of professionals. This period, in my opinion, is mistakenly called metamodernism, but in reality, it is merely the final stage of postmodernism, a completed and perfected postmodernism, polished and refined. Before discussing metamodernism, it is crucial to understand that this model of cultural paradigm shifts applies only to Europe and European origin states such as Germany, the USA, Russia, Australia, and others. For other Western societies like Israel or Japan, and even more so for non-Western countries, this model is not applicable and does not reflect their trends and patterns. In Japan, people fully understand what they are doing and why, just as Muslims are entirely conscious of their situation. One could call this premodernism, but that would be as absurd as applying the European historical framework of antiquity, the Middle Ages, and the Renaissance to China. Such a Eurocentric model is incorrect and hinders an accurate perception of reality, though it may offer a useful simplification at a primitive level. Metamodernism. In an environment of total meaninglessness, lack of goals, and absence of orientation, we find ourselves in a situation similar to premodernism. People act or refrain from acting based on instinct or past conditioning, constantly shifting their positions, even multiple times a day. In such conditions, metamodernist cultural memes become viral. Unlike modernism, metamodernism is based on biological and natural values, making it its complete opposite. Unlike premodernism, metamodernists clearly understand what they are doing and why. They have constructed a rational justification for their actions, which makes them immune to the kind of indoctrination that modernists used against traditional people. Traditionalists could completely change their worldview by moving to a city or attending a university, whereas metamodernists, like modernists before them, sincerely and irrevocably believe in their ideals. Thus, we end up with a synthesis of the positive and effective tendencies of both premodernism and modernism, directed against and completely rejecting postmodernism. Nihilism and the absence of values are being replaced by new sincerity. This is the defining conflict of the near future. We are already witnessing the early signs of this new era, and everyone can recall personal examples. Metamodernism represents a complete rejection of present-day reality, grounded in pure biology. It is about explaining basic realities to postmodern people who have lost all fundamental knowledge of the world, teaching them that men and women exist and are different, that intelligence and strength vary among individuals, that achieving success requires effort, and that to accomplish anything, one must simply push through and do it. These seemingly simple ideas become transformative factors, indoctrinating and reprogramming individuals. Those who awaken to this reality often see the person who enlightened them as a prophet or a messiah. The primary means by which postmodernism resists this new era is through mockery, reducing the opponent's position to absurdity. In the short term, this strategy slows the growth of new movements, much like premodernism once resisted modernism. But in the long run, it is a losing strategy. Those already infected with metamodernism have a firm grasp of their beliefs and are immune to ridicule. Moreover, the potential of metamodernism is far greater simply due to its natural alignment with human instincts. Even if every current postmodernist remains one, they will still be outnumbered in 70 years because metamodernists reproduce at a much higher rate, and no method for eternal life has been invented yet. This paradigm shift is inevitable. It may be delayed or slowed, but certain processes are predictable based on fundamental principles. Just like a computer, reality operates according to instructions and algorithms that can be calculated and anticipated, even if randomness makes precise predictions difficult. The last point I want to emphasize: modernism fought against the old world to build a new one, while metamodernism fights against the absence of a world to restore one. This is a dramatic difference that defines both struggles. This cycle has repeated many times and will continue. Metamodernism will become dominant, eventually losing its vitality, And against the empty traditions of ancestors, modernism will rise again. This is the natural cycle of European civilization.